Hey everyone, welcome to Beyond. Be sure to hit like and subscribe so others can find the channel. Today I have an amazing guest, Major Williams, who's a Republican candidate for the governor of the state of California. Major is a born leader with an entrepreneurial spirit and history. His story really speaks of the American dream time and time again as he's sort of taken this journey where he's really struck out and really achieved the American dream. And as governor, Major intends to restore the essence of what California truly is and address policies that will make life in California the best it can for all its citizens. Major, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, really excited to learn more about your story. So as I was reading about sort of your upbringing, you said your early story, you really had an early story of growing up in a single parent home with your mom and three sisters. How did this upbringing shape your worldview?
Well, it actually gave me a lot of character. Being the only boy in the house, I was able to get really attached to doing chores at a very early age and, hard work, raking the yard and mowing the lawn and painting and things of that nature. But it also made me a very uh, protective individual of my sisters and also, of course, my mom as well. And I think it's kind of like translated into my teenage years, my 20s, and now in my 40s. Just being a protector and always someone that stood up to bullies, no matter what the situation was. And it's funny because even in high school, I'm the skinny little kid, protecting all the other kids from getting bullied, and I'm smaller than they are. But it's just a part of who I was as far as my character growing up in the household that I did.
What was it like being the man of the house at such a young age? I mean, that's a daunting responsibility. In your mind's eye, you're realizing that, hey, my mom needs protection, my sister needs it. I think it's innate in every man at some level. What was that like to take on that role and that responsibility?
Well, it's easier to talk about it now as an adult to be able to assess it. But when you're in that moment, like you don't understand that's what you're actually doing. No different than me understanding that I was an entrepreneur starting at 14 years old by cutting, multiple neighbors' house and making money from it. That was just something you did for survival. And I tell people I did it because I wanted to go to the local store and buy me a hamburger. I was hungry, so out of necessity, I created something. But like I said, it defines a lot of who I am today. Having a lot of respect for women, my sisters, and my wife, and it just adds to the brand of leadership that I've been able to create in regards to who I am today.
So you mentioned something interesting that you went and cut grass because you wanted to survive, you wanted to eat. So what were some of the challenges that you had to navigate growing up that maybe most people couldn't relate to?
Well, uncertainty. My mom was taken away from me not once but twice due to criminal activities, and she was taken to prison. So I was bounced around from family member to family members. And once she got out the second time, we were in unfamiliar territory in regards to me getting comfortable with knowing my mother again, but also being in another neighborhood that I didn't know, I didn't grow up in naturally, and it was a very, very rough neighborhood. And so trying to navigate that psychologically from socializing, but at the same time trying to rebuild my connection with my mother because I felt abandoned. And so it was very complex, and psychologically not having a father present oftentimes left me, making the bad decisions because I didn't have that guidance, that mentorship, or even that direction. But at the same time, those type of moments and upbringings build you to be the person that you eventually become. And so, although I wouldn't wish that type of upbringing on a lot of other people, especially my kids, but it is something that added a lot of value to who I am today.
Yeah, it really developed a lot of character. What's really fascinating to me is that you didn't have that fatherly figure. You had the issue with your mom you just described, yet you had this amazing passion and work ethic. I mean, you're an entrepreneur at a younger age. Cutting grass at 14. What would you say fueled that work ethic and that passion? Was it pure survival, or was there something innately in you that spoke to that bigger cause that was in you?
I think there was something innately in me, even in those environments and, growing up in the projects and whatnot, I never felt like I belonged there. I never felt like it was natural. But at the same time, I was hungry. I wanted to figure out a way to eat. And in my community, in my neighborhood upbringing, there's three different options for a lot of kids. It's either you play ball, you become a rapper, or you sell drugs. And I did two of those things, which was, play ball and get into music. But at the same time, like I just had no other choice. But God has done remarkable things in my life, whether I acknowledged it or knew it then. Now I'm able to assess it and realize that's what it was. You know, when I say I didn't understand I was an entrepreneur, I was literally cutting the yard in my mom's yard one day. And a woman next door, her name is Miss Pearl, she called me over. She was like 60 something, 70 years old. And she said she would give me $20 to cut her yard. My mind was blown because I had no idea that you can make a profit, you know, cutting someone's yard. And then a light went off. I said, you know what? Maybe I'm gonna go and ask the next neighbor and the next neighbor and the next neighbor if I can cut their yards too. You know, a couple of weeks later, I probably had like 20, 25 houses that I was cutting that particular week. I had to get my cousin to help me. And voila, you know, I'm able to go and get hamburgers and feed myself and help my sisters out.
Right. And you could afford more than one hamburger for sure. So again, it was, I listened to your story and the arc of it, and you come through the projects and your mom's sort of in and out of the picture at some level, yet you grabbed the opportunity, certainly as best you could. And you really enjoyed both academic and athletic excellence as you moved forward into your adult life. So at Louisiana Tech University, you stood out as an innovator and was acknowledged for your world-class debating skills. I'd argue you had a record of 21-2 in debates over the course of 2 years. So where did the seeds of your oratory and debating talents, take hold or begin?
Well, it all started with, you know, when you grow up in my kind of household, we're always debating about something. And so you have to have a knack for defending yourself through conversation.
Right.
But another thing is that, you know, my first year out of high school, I went to Trinity Valley Community College in Athens, Texas. And the first thing my coach did was grab me by the hand and walk me across campus. And he walked me into a speech class. In that particular speech class, I was horrified and I felt a little humiliated because this guy is basically saying I can't talk, I can't speak, I can't relay a message. And I thought it was like, you know, he was profiling me. But in hindsight, as who I am today, I always talk about that particular instance. It changed my life to be able to go into a particular place and work on myself and speak in front of people and give me that confidence to just talk about myself, talk about subjects and topics. It kind of helped me when I went off to Louisiana Tech University. So by the time I got there, and in the intramural, this was all the intramural and the recreation center that had the debate teams. For me, it was just like from how I grew up, and then also from having that experience from standing in front of people without any fear, expressing myself, but then just being prepared. When you were talking about certain things, just being prepared and being able to offer up your solution, and hopefully, you know, at the end of it, you know, you get the flag of approval.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think what's remarkable in that is that when you maybe didn't have the skill set, someone who comes into your life and speaks into it, and you had a choice to make. You could have blown that guy off and been offended because ego takes over. And how dare you say I don't have the skills or I'm less than, but yet you took a different approach. You said, I'm going to listen. I'm going to absorb. And maybe there's something I can learn in here. And it turned into something pretty brilliant, I would argue.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've always had something that I call a 3-second delay. So whenever I'm about to make a hasty decision, and I've made them in the past, I'm not perfect, but for the most part, I have a 3-second delay in regards to before I react on something. And I think that in those certain instances, that 3-second delay worked in my favor and in my benefit, and allowed me to kind of just like pause for a second and say, you know what, maybe this won't be so bad, right? Maybe this would be something that could actually help me. Maybe I should just be quiet, listen, and absorb the information that's being given to me, and it may end up being something that actually helps me. And 10 times out of 10, that is absolutely the case, and most definitely with that instance.
That's a great rule that we could all use even as adults. So I also read that you went off to Eastfield College where you concluded your college basketball career. And I found that interesting. That how would you say that your college basketball experience prepared you for the future of public service?
Well, it's about work ethic, having a certain work ethic, having a goal, also having a vision, and understanding that, without a team, you can only go so far, right? So basketball is a team sport. And so if you're a part of a team sport and you're trying to be, everything on the court, then you're going to find yourself in a predicament where you're not going to be a good team or a good player. And so I was able to take life lessons from the lessons I learned in basketball, which is hard work, dedication, paying attention to detail, and always work to get better. Always work to get better and appreciate the people that are around you and compliment them and encourage and empower those individuals as well. And once you do that, if you do it effectively enough, you create a culture. You create an entire culture. So the things that you're giving out, now people are actually giving it back to you as well too. And it really feels good when that happens.
Yeah, that's interesting. So in 2001, you made the move to California, where you met your lovely wife. I've been able to see pictures on your website with your three amazing kids. So your wife is also an entrepreneur in her own right, and she started businesses in the arts. And as I mentioned, she's raising your three children.
Yes.
But then together, you guys started Major Kicks for Kids. So what is the goal and focus of this nonprofit?
So, Major Kicks for Kids, the ultimate goal is to inspire and empower the next generation to be and become whatever it is they need to become, but also be that bridge of communication and an ally and a resource to help them get there. So, it's one thing to say you can be all you can be, but it's also the component that needs to be there is that I want to help you, or how can we help you? And do you need this or do you need that? Now, we give away over 1,000 pair of shoes every single year and over 2,000 haircuts. But that truly is on the surface of it. The real work is really behind once we got them smiling, once we have them with a fresh cut and they feel good about themselves. So let's have a conversation about what is it that you want to do with yourself, your life, your career, whatever. And hopefully from our mentorship and the mentors that we bring on board, we're able to help you navigate those waters to be able to succeed in those areas. And that's ultimately what it's for. It's very empowerment focused and empowerment driven in regards to why we created it and the tool and how we use it as a tool to do just that.
Right. And so Major Kicks for Kids, is there a website that people can go to support your important
Yeah,
mission?
majorkicksforkids.com.
Oh, that's
Absolutely.
simple. Okay, excellent. So for 10 years now, you've been really politically active and you've been engaging the community. You've been into town hall meetings. You've done a lot of outreach. And now I would argue you're in the most important political race of your career, that of the governor of the state of California. And California, by anyone's definition, I would say, is in a state of upheaval with skyrocketing homelessness, violence on the streets. I just saw an article in I think it was Oakland, just crazy violence going on. They're now organizing citizen groups that are patrolling the streets. We know that lockdowns from COVID has really just crushed businesses. People are fleeing the street, fleeing this state in high numbers, all while successful efforts underway to recall the current governor. So my number one question is, given all that, why are you running for governor?
Well, honestly, I don't look at it as a huge issue like other people. It's all about mindset and perspective. Oftentimes, when you say those laundry lists of things that are going on for a certain person, they may look at that and be like, oh, I wouldn't want to touch that. But for me, being an entrepreneur, small business owner, and a very creative, imaginative person, I look at it as an opportunity where other people say it as obstacles. I get excited about it because the opportunity is in the struggle. The opportunity is in the obstacle. And anytime anything is hard, excuse me, anytime when anything is hard in history, there are always individuals that stand up or stood up, right? And so why not me? Why not us? Why not this particular time and moment that we actually approach it from that perspective? And I think that's one of the main reasons why. But also, um, I think it's time for a different brand of leadership here in California. I also think it's time for a non-career politician, which is why I always say I would vote for an electrician over anybody, because at least an electrician has the ability to work for completion, meaning that if they come to your house or to your job, they can't leave without the job being done. They don't get their check unless the job is done. And what we are witnessing in California and even across our entire state and country is that we're dealing with perennial runners, perennial candidates, and career politicians who are, ideally do not deal in completion. They deal in passing the buck to the next person and, saying that we're going to solve this complex issue the next time or the next cycle, whatever. And I'm basically the representation of enough is enough. So here's your alternative. If you want someone that's more relatable to you from your background, your upbringing, we share very similar stories, morals, and values. Here is your alternative, California. It's time for us to do better. And it is time for us to think major about the future of California.
No, I really like that, Major. I think you're spot on. I think there's a duopoly in terms of the Republicans and Democrats and two-party rule. And as I see the dynamics of the last 4 years, it feels like to me that people aren't so aligned with the party so much as the people and the values that people represent. And I think the idea of you coming in as a non-politician is music to most of the voters' ears, because I think they've seen the results of that. And I think sort of the great awakening, people have been awakened to what's going on, really, how things are really managed. And as we just described the laundry list in California, the current leadership is not effective in addressing those issues. It's not for lack of money. Certainly, there's a lot of money there. But at a high level, when you know, what do you see as the most pervasive problems in California, and how would you go about addressing them in a meaningful way? Because you're going to have to tackle these things. I love your statement on, you know what, if there's a problem, you run towards it and you deal with it. So as you look at California, what would you say is the most pervasive problems?
Well, one of the big things that we have to do in California is make California business friendly. Once you approach the economic side of things, there's a ripple effect, and so many other things change based upon those dynamics in regards to jobs, our economy, and just a boost to our economy in general. But the second biggest thing, which they actually kind of work side by side, is homelessness. We know under Governor Gavin Newsom's leadership, homelessness has went up over 16% over the last 2.5 years in itself, and it would never change or decrease until we start looking at homelessness like a business, like a service versus a business. What we're doing now is looking at homelessness like a business, and we keep flooding money and just thinking if you put money into it, things are going to change. But from my experience working in group homes and nonprofits for the last 20 years, when I first got out here, I understand the mechanisms that are needed, necessary, and required. And those three mechanisms is mental health hospitals, drug and rehab facilities, and these two do not work without the third component, which is wraparound services for transitioning into jobs, trades, opportunities, housing, etc. Because if you don't allow that last mechanism to exist, which it doesn't really now, it's going to be a perpetual cycle of those individuals, okay, getting clean, getting the help that they need, but they have no outlets, no opportunity, nowhere to go. And so once we do that and put a dent in our homeless situation, in our homeless crisis, should I call it, and getting people reacclimated back in society, only then will we see a shift in our state. You know, you can't even go to a park right now or walk down the sidewalk without tent encampments all over the place here in our state. And so it's definitely time for a different brand of leadership. And we have some really great things that we're going to bring up, bring on the table, like the Restore California plan, which is amazing. And it's not me saying I know it all or I'm the genius or whatever. It's saying that I'm a leader. I understand how leadership works. Leadership knows their weaknesses, but also identifies their strengths, and they empower using their position and leverage to bring the best and brightest together to solve some of these so-called complex issues. And that is the brand of leadership that I will offer all of California.
It's fantastic. So, you know, as an entrepreneur, you'll know this, right? When you start your business mowing lawns, you understand how the importance of listening to your customer base and providing the best product and service. It all starts with listening to the unmet needs that they're really looking to solve, right? It feels like with politicians, they do the opposite, where they say one thing to get elected, and once they're in there, they sort of violate the will of the people. They violate the values of the people at some level. And they start enacting policies that people are just flummoxed by. It's like, you know, they didn't vote for that. So how will you approach restoring the integrity of the California political system so voters can have confidence that their values and ideals are being represented?
Well, you kind of laid it out. You know, the difference between a lot of these politicians is that they are like career students, and their goal was to be in politics. With me, this wasn't my lifelong goal, dream, or even ambition many years ago, but we are what we are now. But I understand this about leadership. The background that I have and the empathy that I have and the relatability to those particular issues are more so close to me than anyone, simply because I come from communities where our voices were suppressed, our voices went unheard. And because of that, you know, I feel like we were lacking in certain areas. And so for me to be an individual, but also a candidate, and if an elected candidate, which I'd be grateful for, my governance style will not change. As an entrepreneur, I understand my most successful moments has come from a collaborative effort. And I actually enjoy victories. The thing about it with these politicians, they enjoy checks. I enjoy victories. I enjoy those moments and memories that I'm connecting with people all across the state or saying, hey, he said this, we did this, and it got done at the end of the day. So remember that they enjoy checks. I enjoy victories.
Right. Boy, that's a powerful statement. So when we think about the makeup of the California state legislature, I know there's been some inroads with Republican congressional candidates, certainly in this past election cycle. How would you envision working across the aisle to forge consensus that reflects the will of the majority of California voters? I mean, again, you're going to be walking into a predominantly Democratic legislature.
Right. Well, I think I'm tailor made for that predicament, to be honest with you. Just having the ability to, excuse me, effectively communicate just with people in general and also in business. Being a marketing executive in sales and advertising has given me the unique ability to identify my strengths and weaknesses, as I said, but also to identify the opportunities, but also to bring people into the educational aspect of how you use your position and power to leverage and understand there's not a magic wand. We have to deal in reality. Everything isn't going to be expedited, but it has to start with a person in office that's supportive of what we are all trying to accomplish, but also who has the intent. That's very important. Things will never get going if you don't have anyone in office that at least has the intent to go and sway those other individuals. But I always tell people, I have a good understanding of how to use leverage, pace myself with opportunity. And sometimes you have to give a little here to get a little here, and we'll revisit something else later. But voters need to know how that process works and kind of how a little bit of my philosophy and mindset is going into that. I think that we're going to be in a place in time to where people are really going to start holding these individuals accountable, and having some of these social media platforms, even due to censorship or whatever, there's more of an opportunity to hold these individuals to the fire, because for whatever they say no to, for someone like myself as a governor, going and having the huge platform, because it'll be global news once I win, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the platform would be very extensive. So being able to identify those individuals, which I will, that were for us or against us, is very monumental. And that's something that they're going to have to think about also.
Right. That's a very great point. So, as people think about politics, it's an unavoidable fact of life, right? It takes a lot of money to run a campaign and certainly win the governorship. So, how does a politician strike the balance of raising money from special interests, yet staying true to the will of the voters?
Well, I think that's more so for individuals who are don't have the kind of talent or background or skill that I have. Mind you, I come from a marketing background. I've done music, I've done street teams, I know advertising, ads, sales, and things of that nature. So I am a different beast when it comes to that, and I understand the nuance of it's going to take money. But what a lot of people don't understand, what's even more important than money, is the momentum and connections that you create across this entire state. If you've been able to follow this campaign, it is absolutely a hit record, meaning that everyone is talking about it. And this hasn't happened in California's most recent history, especially for a Republican. People are galvanized. And it is a lot, has a lot to do with the lockdowns and also timing, because people are more receptive to a candidate like myself. But nonetheless, it's still a hit record. So we can raise $10 million and it can feel like $100 million, because so many more people are talking about what we're doing. And then the other work is going to happen. We're not rookies at what we're doing. We may appear that way because some people may not know us. But as far as directly in politics and campaigns, the last 4.5 years, around some of the best and brightest to ever do it in our state, or should I say in our country. And so the things that I'm doing are very on par with any top tier campaign. And we're looking forward to this ride and this journey. And hopefully it's going to be us ringing a victory bell and being sworn in on the Bible as the 41st governor of California.
Yeah, that'd be great. And that would be historic for sure. So, as governor, what will you want to accomplish in your first 100 days?
Well, the first 100 days is we're going to directly use executive orders to attack bills like SB 276, bills like SB 277, bills like AB 5, bills like SB, what was it, AB 5 and SB 145 as well.
Mm-hmm.
So those, going to be, those things are on my top priority list, in addition to putting together my task force, which is going to work with good people like Tim Ballard at Rescue or our Rescue, to create this task force for child sex trafficking, and also look into how we can truly reform our immigration system, and also take California out of the equation of being a sanctuary city or state for illegal immigrants in the first 100 days.
That's a lot, and that's good to hear. You're focused on those issues. So let's start some of those specific issues. What is your position on states, the state mandating vaccinations?
Well, I believe in choice. I believe that individuals that feel like they need a vaccination or want a vaccination should have access to it, and we should be able to supply that access. I do not believe in mandatory vaccinations. I do not believe in the trend that's happening right now, because once you open that particular door and that trend, it leads to so many other unintended consequences, so to speak. People can't get jobs if they're not vaccinated. People can't fly. People can't go certain places because of a vaccination. And now it creates a different divide, and it feels, and I didn't experience this, of course, but it feels like an aura of what we've experienced or learned in the past from when you have segregation and racism, right? People
Mhm.
are going to be able to profile you based upon mask or no mask, vaccination, no vaccination. And history has told us whenever you do that psychologically of the profile of an individual or of a culture of people, it's bad for our nation, and it definitely is bad for our state.
Yeah, I would agree. It really is leading to the divided states of America as opposed to the United States. And I think that would absolutely divide a lot of people along a lot of lines. And so I tend to agree with that position. I think it's critical that people have the choice in vaccinations or not, and sort of let it play out. Because I'm in medical devices, and the thing you worry about in the early stage of any vaccination being launched as quickly as it was developed is you don't want to be the test pilot. You don't want to be that person that, the guinea pig, so to speak, where they're just not 100% sure of the long-term outcomes. And then there's some unintended consequences from that as well. I know it's a fine balance. People's lives are in the balance, but I think from a public policy standpoint on health, you really got to give people the ability to make their own choice for their own body.
Absolutely. No, I agree. I agree 100%. And like I said, I feel the exact same thing when it comes to the mask as well.
Yeah. What is your position and approach on public safety?
Well, I mean, public safety kind of blends in with homelessness right now because it's actually increasing the crime rate all across our entire state. But I think that we definitely have to look at it from a perspective of what's been said in the communities and also what's been said with some of our chiefs and our sergeants and our police officers. And what they've all collectively agreed upon is training is something that's definitely necessary and required. But I'm also a strong opposer against defunding our police department as well. I'm one of those individuals that agree that reform could be there, and they agree as well. And also more training, but also more funding actually should be in place, and what we should be talking about. When it comes to listening to the community, I hear the community also. Their needs and concerns is basically saying, let's take funds from there and put into more creditable, programs for the actual community to enrich, empower, educate, whatever. My thing is, I agree with that, but not where you pull the funding from. So as a leader, my biggest thing is how do we create new revenue? And that is something of something that I'm really get excited about because that's my specialty. And I think that's what a lot of candidates and also elected officials, they lack in those areas, the ability to create new revenue or just to have an imagination beyond saying, let's create a new tax to pay for the next program or to pay for the next infrastructure or whatever. So public safety is a huge issue that we have to tackle, and that's something I'm looking forward to talking to all sides when it comes to what can be done. And it is one of those situations where it's something that can be expedited in certain pockets, but in other ways, there's still open wounds there that we have to take some time with.
Yeah, that's well said because I think there's a big debate on defining the police, and I really appreciate your position. There has to be a balanced approach, and I think the idea that I sort of come from the law of abundance, right? There's never a zero sum game. It's not either one for the other. It's both because I think we're always in this expanding universe, right? And expanding wealth, and the idea that you can still fund the police and yet do programs that are very helpful, like Major for Kicks, right? Or other programs that can really embolden and help people on that journey, give them education, give them hope. There's so many things we can do. And more importantly, try to divide that, or sorry, sort of provide a bridge over that divide or that gap that people feel amongst one another. And I think things that really divide us as the state of California really has to be looked at, because if there's an intention to do that, no matter if you defended the police 100%, that divide is the divide that creates the angst, the energy that's negative, right? So to me, it starts with bringing people together in a real way where they can listen to each other, but not certainly at the expense of defining the police, because that's the thin blue line, right? That's it. If you eliminate that, you have, in my mind, anarchy.
Right, absolutely. And some people don't understand that, law enforcement is 24 hours a day. It's 24/7. There is no off, there's no closed days. It's open and operating at all times of the day, every single day. And so to be able to to think that pulling funds away is going to be more beneficial, I don't get that notion. But I always tell people, especially in certain communities, the urban communities and the poorest communities are going to be the first or most impacted by those lack of funds when it comes to law enforcement, because those are the first communities that feel that true impact based upon the statistics and the data of the activity that's happening in those areas.
And that, I think, is the biggest point right there. The people you're saying you're trying to help are the people that will be most hurt by that policy. What is your position on the Second Amendment? Speaking of policing and being able to protect yourself.
Sure. Well, I know that California is overregulated when it comes to restrictions and red tapes when it comes to our Second Amendment rights. We have so many restrictions put on even just purchasing ammunition and things of that nature. As an ex-governor of California, those are things that we are going to strip away, and we're going to simply because I believe in an open carry state. I believe an open carry state is a safer state. I believe that being able to protect your family is essential. And I also believe that being an open carry state is an actual deterrent, right? If you have a diner and a person is thinking about going into that diner, there's 3 or 4 people in there and the people who work there, I think they'll think about it because, more so then than now, because people in that diner actually may be, legal carriers. So they'll think about that. So it's a deterrent more than anything. It's not to come out here and be a part of the Wild Wild West and be a part of, movies that you see and everyone is doing it for the glamour of it. This is truly, it's always been about being able to protect yourself at all costs and your family.
Major, that's a commonsensical approach, and I've always looked at gun-free zones in schools. Those where a lot of the mass shootings occur is ineffective. And you're absolutely right. If there's that potential, if a criminal's going to have a criminal intent and they realize going into place that there could be some opposition, that's always a healthy thing. So I really appreciate your perspective on that. How do you, what's your stance on illegal immigration? Because I know right now with current policy and with the new administration, there seems to be a push to just opening up the borders and letting people flood in. How do you think about illegal immigration, and what do you think needs to happen?
Well, I think my stance is it's about California first. We're dealing with so much right now. That's the last thing that we should be dealing with in regards to allowing a free for all in regards to illegal immigration, illegal immigrants coming into our state. We know that over $270 million was given to illegal immigrants during these lockdowns. We have Californians that are not, that are going without. We have the EDD crisis as well. So I'm a huge opposer of illegal immigration. I believe we need strong reform, strong borders, and we need to have a presence to know that this will not be tolerated in regards to coming over the California border. And as the ex-governor of California, that brand of leadership will resonate across the entire state.
That's great. As I think about some of the people that most impacted me when I was growing up, one of them was Martin Luther King in his speech where he says, "You judge a man by the content of his character, not the color of his skin." And as I was raised in my home, I never saw color. I just never did. It just wasn't part of my. It was always the person, their talent, their ability. Are they nice? Are they kind? Basic, simple things like that. Having said that, and I know in America there's this hot topic. Do you believe that racism is systemic in America today? How do you think about the racial, sort of component in America today?
Well, I'm gonna tell you something. Psychologically, it's hard for me to not see color. I actually like being black. I like the color of my skin, and I think it. We always have profiles to identify certain things, religions and race, and I think that's what makes us unique and appealing all at the same time. So, I've always stood on that. Regardless if I accept everyone else not seeing color, that's all great. That means that you're a great person as well. It doesn't make me not great because I do see color, but I like that. I like to see that, that difference and different ethnicities and things of that nature. But as far as systematic racism, it exists in certain spaces, absolutely, and you can track it all the way back to redlining back in the day. But as far as racism in itself, I tell people I do feel like it is on life support, because in this day it's so overused. It's really hard to really put your finger on it, because the reality of it is I just may not like you. And
right.
Because I just may not like you doesn't mean that I'm racist, or it doesn't mean that you don't like that you're racist because you don't like me. It's because of our interaction or because of what I stand for. You just don't like me. And I think it's been hyper overused. And I do believe that racism in itself is on life support. It's really about characters, what you probably don't like. It's really about stances, decisions, free thinking is probably what you don't like. And we're seeing a lot of that happen. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that happen in our entire country, especially this last year or two.
Yeah. As I think about another group that's really been trying to advance the Black cause, we think about Black Lives Matter, and I always think that that's an amazing name from a marketing standpoint, because if you go counter to BLM, you're saying basically Black lives don't matter. So from a marketing standpoint, it's a genius use of words. However, I've seen people on ESPN, Major League Football players, NFL players, really push back on the agenda because it's not really pro-family. It feels more Marxist. What's your view on BLM? Because on one hand, you want to say, yeah, you want to help people, but in my worldview, it seems to me all lives kind of matter, right?
Right.
So how do you think about that?
Yeah. So the thing about it, I've been asked this question over and over again, and even more so here recently. But my stance has been always the same. I think that, like you said, from a marketing perspective, upon the initial launch, I was like, that's a great name, it's a good cause or whatever. But we know it's been hijacked and not feel like Marxist. It is a Marxist group, but they've actually said in their mission statement, and they don't support and represent the Black communities. They support their organization. So I don't support the Black Lives Matter organization, but I love the Black community, and I think all lives matter. My stance hasn't wavered. I don't think I ever can have an extended conversation about it because it's just simply put, at this point, it's just about us, unity and coming together. And my campaign specifically is about all Californians under that particular umbrella.
Right, like it. So we always believed under the Second Amendment we have the freedom of speech. I'm sorry, not the second. I think it's the first, right? We have the freedom of speech, right? Freedom to share our thoughts and views. But we've seen just massive big tech censorship and just suppression of, it feels like, the right side of communication and dialogue. So I saw recently that Governor DeSantis out of Florida came up with some legislation that would really penalize these big tech companies, efforts to suppress free speech. Have you thought about similar legislation if you're the governor of California?
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to take a page out of the governor's book and use that particular model for California to make sure that we are all protected when it comes to being able to have a voice on these particular platforms, because they are being misguided and misused. And to be able to hold dear to your community guidelines, you also have to understand evolution occurs and evolution happens. And so certain amendments have to be made when it comes to that, because it does come down to a fairness at the end of the day. And so I will absolutely look for legislation or look to implement legislation in regards to big tech as well. And I always give a full context in regards to that. This is me not ostracizing everyone that's a part of big tech. There are some good people that exist in those spaces and in those particular industries. There are certain key people at high levels and the people who are the creators of those things, and they're following marching orders in regards to that as well.
Right. That's very well said. Let me switch gears a little bit and go back to kind of your experience growing up. And to me, your arc and your story is so inspiring. It's exciting to see what you're embarking upon. Talk about big goals and dreams. You really are the epitome of that. So how has your life been different than what you'd imagined?
Oh my goodness, how my life has been different than what I've imagined. Well, first of all, I never thought I would be in politics. I never thought or dreamed about being married or having kids. I just was fending for myself very early on. I was always about personal survival, and so my life is different in the sense that I'm so much more calmer. I'm so much more pleasant in certain settings when certain things arise and happen, because I've spent so much of my life being aggressive. I spent so much of my life being on a wall and feeling like I had to always survive every single moment. But to be spirited in God and being faithful and obedient in that particular space has given me such great clarity and has given me such a great zest for life. And so that's the huge difference that I see in everything. And then just being accepting and acknowledging of the great things God has blessed me with, like my family and the friends and opportunities that has come into my world.
So having said that, what advice would you have given your younger self growing up?
Well, I would say, that's a good question, because I appreciate so much of who I was then. And I don't think without those experiences and those mindsets, I would be able to have the reference point to be able to be a great teacher through the stories that I share with them if I didn't have those particular experiences. But I would just say it's going to work out. Your mind is going to evolve, and God is going to bless you with some great things that you're going to be able to hold on to, and you're going to be a great dad and husband.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, what have you accomplished so far or thus far in your life, both personally and professionally, that makes you the proudest, and why?
Oh, I just been able. I think that being able to take in a lot of great information and share it with other people. I think that's been one of the most valuable tools. Having the ability to sit still for 2 years, 12 years ago, lock myself into a library 7 days a week, and then be able to come out of that and be able to just share that value through another brand I have called Majorpreneur, which is where I get paid to public speak, go and speak on panels and seminars, and put together online groups, in-person groups, and just share some of the financial literacy and hacks that I have that were able to empower me, and also those stories of other individuals that we can all use. So the ability to be able to share has given me the most value of all things.
Hmm. Wonderful. So, Major, as you think about your candidacy, is there anything you'd like to share with the audience in closing? Is there any kind of, stump speech or talk that you like to share as people think about you, learn about you for the first time, and just get a sense of you? Because I had the opportunity to go to an event, I think during the holiday season. I met you in person, and I got to hear your story, and it was so impressive and so impactful. So, is there anything in closing you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, given the fact that we're so far ahead and the name recognition has grown or whatever, and more eyeballs are on us, one of the main things that I'm trying to make sure I convey effectively is that we have to change our selective process as voters. We can no longer look at certain individuals and deem them qualified just because qualified comes in different packages and comes from different backgrounds and different routes. We've given those individuals opportunities time and time again. And so we can actually pull from their track record and see that it hasn't been beneficial. So at some point, we have to kind of mature and evolve past that thinking and that voter selective process, and think about what we can do collectively together. So my message is that it is time to think major about the future of California. I am a representative of you simply because I can relate to you. I have empathy, and I know for a fact that we can do some great things together. And if you want to continue to follow me on this journey, join us. Come to the website, majorforgovernor.com. We have a very special feature that's on that particular page where you can leave a video message for us and leave a message and talk to us, and and I talk back. So thank you so much for supporting us thus far. And if you're new to finding out who I am, where have you been? But it's time to catch up. This is the most important election in California's history, and we are focused. We are primed for this. We are prepared, and we are ready.
Major, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation, and wish you and your staff the best of success in this upcoming election.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks.